Now, many of you are probably wondering, why should I care about millennials? Who are these folks? Well, according to the US Census, they're approximately 40% of the US population. That's 125 million large of the 317 million Americans out there. The US Chamber of Commerce tells us that their buying power directly is over $200 billion. Their indirect buying power is over 800. Boston Consulting Group tells us that they have a buying power of 1.3 trillion. By 2025, they will actually be much larger than the baby boomers in terms of workforce, and by 2030, they'll be larger than the baby boomer population. And my favorite saying from Brian Robinson, who works at Yahoo, is the lives that these millennials live today will be the same lives that we'll be living in the next 3 to 5 years. It makes them an absolutely captivating audience to go after and learn about. The economy will lose approximately $12.6 trillion between 2008 and 2018 as a result of the Great Reset. But no group has actually felt the effects more than the millennials. In fact, 9 out of 10 say that it continues to impact their daily lives. 2 in 5 tell us that they're still getting help from their parents. This 13.1% when we did the presentation is 63% higher than those that are 35 plus in terms of unemployment rate. And if you look at the recent numbers, it's actually closer to 16%. Now, as a result of all of these things, what has happened is what I call the uprooting, the rites of passage, the signposts of life. First of all, according to Harvard, about 40% of these consumers are actually foregoing college and going to trade schools to get real skills, to get jobs. This one in particular scares me because I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. Nearly half are okay moving back in with their parents, the boomerang generation. Now, Pew did this study where they asked these same consumers when they think moving out was appropriate. A couple years ago, it was 20. When they redid this study a couple years later, it became 25. They're more likely to get gaming consoles or smartphones than their driver's license. Now, I don't know about you, when I was 16, the car meant physical freedom from my parents. Now, for a fraction of the price, I have physical and emotional freedom from my parents. When you ask what defines this millennial generation, the number one thing is technology use. What's even more interesting is that everyone in marketing has termed this generation as quote-unquote digital natives, which is defined by Wikipedia as a digital native is a person who understands the value of that technology and seeks out opportunities for implementing it. Well, I'd argue that they're not seeking anything at all, because to them, digital isn't a part of life, it just is life. There's no second self, there's just myself. We're also finding that that whole concept of neuroplasticity is happening. New neurotransmitters are being formed in the brains of Gen Y, Gen Z to help them deal with today's world. You're starting to borrow memory from our devices so that you don't have to remember. Case in point, I can ask one of you younger folks, what's your best friend's phone number? I bet you no one knows because you have it on your phone. And you're using those new neurotransmitters to basically get to memory functions so that it helps you multitask much more efficiently. Now, how are we at Yahoo starting to think through these things? Well, David Karp, the founder of Tumblr, he was talking about this whole concept of TLDR. The younger folks in the room are going, yep, totally get that. Too long, didn't read. Well, in our new Digest product, we get that. We also get that young people want to look smart. They don't want to miss out. So every day, we give about 6 stories to the consumers, 6 to 10 atoms, as we call it. It's one paragraph. You can walk in with that one paragraph and 10 stories and look really smart because you're well educated. But if they want to go deep, because they're interested in the category, there's a whole host of visual things like videos, pictures, other larger articles, using some Lee's technology to really kind of aggregate and give us that bite-sized news. It's a very complicated way to grow up. In fact, so complicated that we know that 68% of these millennials won't be making a decision without running it by their networks first. It's all about their family and friends, both on and offline. And what's even more important is they're talking to that social network, not because they're cool, but it's because of this whole concept of trust. If you can't trust your communities, who can you trust? Those are some really big implications that we must take away when it comes to brands. Thank you very much for your time.